Right, on to our top story first. Grade A office completions are slowing sharply in Chennai and Hyderabad despite continued occupier interest. Now, according to a soon-to-be-released report by Savills India, accessed first by ET Now, new office inventory in Chennai fell 23% year-on-year to just about 2.1 million square feet in the first half of 2026, while Hyderabad witnessed an even steeper 63% decline to just a million square feet in these months. Now, while this may be understandable in Chennai, after all, the city's leasing activity softened 30% amid a cautious global environment, Hyderabad still managed 9% growth in gross absorption to 5.9 million square feet and still saw a contraction in office completions. In fact, the contrast becomes sharper when viewed alongside Bengaluru, where developers continue to bring projects to the market. So India's largest office market recorded a 20% increase in new supply to 10 million square feet, supporting a 26% jump in leasing to 13.1 million square feet. So why the slowdown in completions across Chennai and Hyderabad? Could the decline tighten availability of Grade A offices in the coming quarters? And could this possibly impact Hyderabad's GCC juggernaut, given that this segment accounted for 73% of total office leasing here in the first 6 months? Let's ask some of those questions to Arvind Nandan, MD of Research and Consulting at Savills India, who joins us today at our studios. Arvind, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast today. What's going on in India's office market? I mean, there's a 5% decline in inventories pan-India, Arvind. But the fact is that there's 63% decline in Hyderabad and a 23% decline in Chennai. What's going on, and why are these cities seeing declines in office inventory despite there being an overall push for office spaces?
I think it's a very pertinent point to start the discussion with, and it's a very good point that you've raised. Look, Jude, we need to understand this with two other reference points. So first of all, Hyderabad, let's start with Hyderabad, where it's very noticeable, and then we'll come to Chennai. Now, Hyderabad, historically, for last several years, has had massive vacancies, running up to 24, 25%, or sometimes even more than that.
Right.
All right? Supply infusion has been very aggressive in Hyderabad for several years. Now, what has happened is it has been slowed down a little while the absorption is still accelerating.
Right.
So you are still in a very comfortable place in Hyderabad where the vacancy is still reasonably high, but you are bringing it down to more manageable levels.
Right.
It is better for the health of the overall real estate economy in Hyderabad. Now, somewhat similar is the case in Chennai, where also the vacancies were quite high, but now with a little slowdown in supply infusion in this particular half, I think you are coming closer to a more manageable market.
Right.
Yes, there could be a question which you rightly raised, that will this create a fear or will this create a suspicion of the market running out of stock in near future? Fortunately, I don't think that looks to be the case. And if that happened, then obviously there will be a reason for worry. At the current moment, I don't think that is the case. And these things are pretty much reflected in the way the rentals have behaved, which is a very good barometer,
Right.
If the supply really went out of the market, then you will see the rentals skyrocketing.
Okay.
And that's not happening. So that's a very good signal in a way.
Arvind, I want to stay with Hyderabad for just a bit and look at some of the numbers. In fact, the city actually posted a 9% growth in office absorption.
Yes.
But like we were mentioning, completions fell from 2.7 million to just about 1 million square feet.
That's right.
So what is the issue here? Is this primarily a construction pipeline issue fueled by slower launches? Is this perhaps a one-time thing, or are developers fundamentally becoming perhaps a bit more cautious about Hyderabad's office market?
I would say yes and no. Look, let's break down Hyderabad in different parts, and not too many for the sake of convenience.
Right.
You look at one part of Hyderabad, which is the hottest market. That's, let's say, the Madhapur, the high-tech city.
Right.
Over there, you have nothing available. In fact, there are commitments on the basis of which new construction is taking place. But if you went there today to ask for a reasonable amount of space, there's nothing available. That is one part of Hyderabad. There are certain other parts where there is a lot of supply available, and you will have a good bit of stock available. So what is happening is, in Hyderabad, there is a very conscious realization on the part of developers that if you just went on pumping in supply, you will probably land up with a situation where the rentals will nosedive. And with this realization, the supply has been slowed down only a tad bit. It's not really a crash of supply. And the rentals are holding quite good.
Right.
So it is a market. Look, Hyderabad has a history of not doing more than 5 or 6 million. It had that history, and suddenly post-COVID, it started behaving to be like a top market in India, where 10 million became the norm annually. In this year also, in not that big a supply, an absorption year, we've still done close to 6 million in half a year. So you are very good to do a reasonable number at the end of the year. So it's a market which is recording reasonably good interest. Yes, I think we will discuss it further. It is pretty much lopsided in a manner of saying, but that's how Hyderabad is.
Right. And Chennai, the other city that's under the focus today, you're seeing both leasing and completions essentially plummet in the first 6 months of 2026. In fact, Chennai has also registered the sharpest decline in leasing among the major markets. That's a very significant 30% drop. But if we could just analyze these numbers for just a bit, are there structural issues plaguing the city in comparison to, let's say, its neighbors in Bengaluru or Hyderabad? Because not only is leasing down 30%, but new completions, like we mentioned, also down 23%. What's plaguing Chennai?
That particular worry is not misplaced. But I would say, sometimes percentages would not represent the exact picture. Chennai was never a very large market. So, from about 5.5, 5.6, 30% is still, not very bad. Percentage-wise, it's absolutely, a noticeable number. But Chennai, yet again, it was a market which was very small for many years. It has now gone in the range of 8 to 10 million square feet annually. This year, it's done a little over 4.5 million in the first half. I would be a little concerned that it's slid from last year, but there are multiple reasons. One large deal getting delayed, and in fact, that is the case with the demand side right now. Decisions getting delayed, etc. A couple of deals getting delayed or prolonged makes it look a little slow at this point in time. I'm not overly worried with, that decline. Yes, it is a noticeable 30% decline, but, I think with everything going right, it could make up in the Q3 and Q4 of this year.
In the report that you will be releasing in some time, excerpts of which I actually got to read, it actually makes mention of the reasons as to why, occupiers are perhaps becoming a lot more measured with regard to leasing decisions itself, even postponing it. And global uncertainty was a huge factor that you actually went about delving into as far as this assessment is concerned. So what's this translating to on the ground, Arvind? Are companies perhaps delaying leasing decisions? Are they reducing expansion plans? Or is it a case of simply taking longer to commit to a large office transaction? Which of these is it?
Very important point, Jude, and that's the unfortunate reality at this point in time. You've rightly picked up the issue. Ever since we had the India-Pak skirmish last year, followed by the trade tensions, and then followed by a lot of geopolitical events globally from then till now.
West Asia in February as well.
West Asia from early this year, and continuing up until now. Obviously, the corporate world doesn't like this. Decision making becomes slow. So there are decisions which have gotten postponed. What was supposed to happen in March has gotten postponed further. What was supposed to happen in the first half of this year is now looking postponed to the second half. And with that, you naturally see a slowness in expansions. New occupancy decisions get delayed, postponed. So unfortunately, that's happening. And that's pretty much reflected in the overall number. We are speaking only of South India, but if I could just take a few seconds to say, on a pan-India level, while we've done 41.5 million square feet absorption, that is a very small growth on last year's H1. And in fact, the bigger picture inside of that is that our Q2 has slowed down a little from Q1. And that itself tells you the story. So yes, there is a kind of slowness in decision and postponement of decisions. There is no escaping that.
I know we're oscillating between Hyderabad and Chennai, but if I could quickly come back to Hyderabad for a bit, Arvind, why this data may be concerning, one might say, and you can perhaps set the record straight, is that it comes even as the city remains India's most GCC-driven market. In fact, 73% of all leasing actually came from the GCC segment in the first 6 months of 2026. Does such a high dependence on GCCs for this one city make it all the more vulnerable, perhaps, when multinational companies slow expansion or delay real estate decisions with regard to leasing itself in the city?
Hyderabad is like that, as is Mumbai, which is heavily finance dependent. So Hyderabad is a technology-driven market. In fact, 25 years ago, the spillover from Bangalore used to mainly go to Chennai, but the picture changed about 15 years ago. All the spillover from Bangalore started to go to Hyderabad, and now Hyderabad has its own independent pull for technology companies.
Right.
So you're absolutely right. To the extent of 75, 77%, it is only technology. And within technology, there are obviously, there's a full spectrum. On the one hand, you have AVGC firms, you have revenue cycle management firms. There are so many different things. But yes, it is technology. So if you wanted to assess the risk, yes, there is a bit of risk. But I believe the whole spectrum inside of that tech band provides it a little bit of stability. It's highly unlikely that everything will come crashing down on any single day. So while it is tech dependent, it still has its own safety valves built in inside of that market. So yes, one-sided in a manner of speaking, but not that vulnerable that it would crash. That's my belief at this point.
Well, Arvind, one can only hope that with all three South Indian cities actually doing rather well for themselves on leasing by and large, that supplies actually go about meeting this demand and that some semblance of stability, all the geopolitical factors notwithstanding, is restored.
If I could just add a small point before we round up. If we spoke of GCCs, there is yet another market, which is north and south, and which is the second or the third biggest market alternatively, that is Pune. So it is between Bangalore, Hyderabad and Pune that the whole GCC game is played in India.
Right.
So there's a little bit of...
Well, there's a challenger right around the corner then to South India and its big GCC push. But let's hope that stability resumes despite the geopolitical challenges. On that note, Arvind, thank you so much for joining us in South Central and breaking down these insights. Great to have you with us. Well, moving on and shifting focus to the controversial Mekedatu project next, Tamil Nadu Chief Minister Joseph Vijay has written to Prime Minister Modi challenging the centre's position that Karnataka does not require the consent of lower riparian states to move ahead with the proposed Mekedatu project over the Kaveri River. In fact, Vijay has urged the centre to reject Karnataka's proposal, arguing that it violates the Supreme Court's 2018 judgment and could adversely impact Tamil Nadu's water share. Now, despite heightened interstate tensions, reports suggest that Chief Minister Vijay has decided, despite all of the fracas between Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, to go ahead and pursue bilateral engagement with Karnataka over the Kaveri water dispute. This despite opposition from farmer groups in Tamil Nadu demanding a stronger legal approach. Vijay, we're told, is expected to meet Karnataka Chief Minister D.K. Shivkumar on August the 3rd with the focus on securing the state's due share of Kaveri water while opposing the proposed Mekedatu reservoir. Right. In September last year, a stampede at a TVK rally in Karur claimed 41 lives, triggering widespread outrage and raising serious questions over crowd management. On coming to power, the Vijay-led Tamil Nadu government announced government jobs for the legal heirs of the victims of that stampede as a relief measure. However, the Madras High Court has struck down that decision, ruling that such appointments violate the constitutional guarantees of equality and equal opportunity in public employment. Let's listen to some of those reactions.
DMK as a party shares the sorrow and pain of the family of the victims who lost their life during the Karur stampede. It is the responsibility of the political party to provide financial assistance, educational assistance and job assistance to the victim's family. However, what the TVK did was unprecedented and was not legally right as viewed by the...
There are employment exchanges where people register and wait for years to get a job, and especially a government job. So many examinations people take seriously and clear, and this could set a very wrong precedent what the TVK government is doing. The Karur stampede basically happened because of two mistakes: the negligence of the previous DMK government and the negligence of the ruling TVK, because back then the now Chief Minister took his own sweet time to go and address the gathering, which caused...
So on South Central today, we find out, what does this judgment mean for compassionate appointments, executive powers, and the limits of political promises? Joining us now is Advocate Richardson Wilson to break it all down. Richardson, thank you so much, firstly, for joining us on South Central. Always a pleasure having you on the show. Now, just to go over what the High Court has said, the court essentially said that these appointments, Richardson, violate Articles 14 and 16 of the Indian Constitution. Could you explain for our viewers why the court found the government's decision unconstitutional?
Yeah, thank you, Jude. Always a pleasure being on your show. At the outset, I must tell your viewers that insofar as government employment is concerned, Article 14, which is the Equality Clause, and Article 16, which is the Non-Discrimination Clause, mandates that all selection to government employment be through open competition, right? So the government must issue a selection notification, give wide publicity, advertise it, have an interview or a written test, and then select people on the basis of merit. Now, compassionate appointments are an exception carved out under the law to give appointment to a family member of a government employee who dies in harness. So a policeman, say in the line of duty, he passes away, or somebody from the army, or anybody who dies in harness. So as to ensure that the family has financial stability, there is an exception that you give them compassionate appointments. So the court found that giving compassionate appointments to people who have effectively passed away, no matter how tragically, in a political meeting would set a bad precedent. The other reason that the court has given, of course, I'm on a caveat, Jude, that the court order has not been uploaded, so I have not read it fully. But from the reporting that is in the media and from what I could hear from lawyers who were present in the courtroom, the court has noted that there are already people waiting for compassionate appointments in Tamil Nadu. In fact, Jude, I take this opportunity to mention that in March of this year, the Madurai bench of the High Court had sought a report from the state government on the number of people who are waiting for compassionate appointments. This was in an unrelated case, but the court noted that there are several thousands of people who are waiting. And these are all also family members of government servants who had passed away in harness tragically. So if that is the case, then the government showing undue haste and sort of parachuting the Karur Stampede victims to the top of the line was not justified, and that's what the court has found.
Right. No, it's rather interesting what you mentioned, Richardson, with regard to there being a clear difference between the precedent that has been set before and what is being done now. And you and I both know that governments often announce compensation after major tragedies. So essentially, this court order now draws a line or a fine line between both financial relief and offering public sector jobs. Is that what it ultimately boils down to?
Absolutely, because there is no bar on ex gratia compensation. Once there is a tragedy, the chief minister could announce financial assistance to the family members of those who have passed away tragically in the tragedy. But when it comes to government jobs, Jude, the thinking and the reasoning is, look, there are tens of thousands of youth, and we don't know their tragic circumstances, right? They could be children of single mothers. They could be from the lower economic strata of society. They could have suffered tragedies in their lives. We don't know all of that. So you can't, deny them. And they've been waiting in line for 5 years, 10 years, hoping that, they'll move up the queue and they'll eventually get a job. So when something like this happens, just because it happened at a TVK rally and TVK is now the ruling party, they can't, in suppression of all these other youth who have also suffered tragedies, offer compassionate appointments. Nobody is stopping them from giving ex gratia financial assistance. And in fact, they have given. Even when the DMK government was in power, the DMK government announced financial relief, the DMK party announced relief, and the TVK party also announced relief. So that was already given. The issue comes when you give compassionate appointments because you're cutting the queue.
Right. Now, Richardson, does the government have a legal avenue to challenge this verdict? I mean, of course they do. They can challenge it in a higher court. Do you see this likely to happen, though? And is there a way that you can go about doing this in a way that provides relief to these victims' families? But is a challenge likely in this case, Richardson?
I think the media has reported that the state government has already filed an appeal before the Honorable Supreme Court against this order. They may mention for an early hearing as well, but they have made clear their intention to take the order in appeal.
And beyond the politics surrounding Karur, I know for a fact that Karur has been a highly charged political issue since late September last year. What is the broader message that this judgment actually goes about sending in terms of executive discretion, compassionate appointments, and just the procedural sanctity of government recruitment? What do you make of the order in this context?
I think the order, Jude, I must tell you, is one which is absolutely correct in terms of the law behind it, right? And it follows a long line of precedents of judgments of the Supreme Court as well as the Madras High Court, which have consistently held that you cannot have compassionate appointments bypassing those who have been waiting in queue, right? So, because all of these people who are waiting for compassionate appointments have suffered tragedies. So, you cannot bypass that order. In fact, let me give you an example. In 2021, a policeman had passed away in the line of duty in Thoothukudi. Now, his daughter had applied for compassionate appointment and was denied compassionate appointment because the government found that her brother was well to do, in the sense that he had an annual income of 4.5 lakhs. Now, take that as an example, right? You've denied a cop's daughter compassionate appointment because you find that her brother is reasonably well off. 4.5 lakhs is not a lot of money, right? But you found that she's not eligible. So then it begs the question, how can you say that all of these families of the Karur Stampede victim are eligible? Have you gone to their backgrounds? Have you seen if their family members are earning? So the judgment upholds the law that you can't have compassionate appointment in breach of the existing policy. Also, there is a government order, Jude, in Tamil Nadu on how to give compassionate appointments. And without taking a lot of time, let me tell you, they need to go onto a list, right? And compassionate appointments can be given in order of that list. It's like a waiting list.
Absolutely.
And in the Karur case, that procedure was given a go by. So the court has noted that you've acted arbitrarily, and that's why they struck it down. So I think the judgment itself is sound in law, and we have to wait and see what the Honorable Supreme Court does.
Right. Richardson, all I can say is the tragedy of Karur, notwithstanding, this case certainly makes for a fascinating legal study in terms of how compassionate appointments are gone about, being conducted, and whether or not the Tamil Nadu government will pursue this matter in a higher court. But thank you so much for joining us and breaking down some of these insights pertaining to that highly controversial Tamil Nadu government order for 41 government vacancies or government employment to 41 individuals who tragically passed away in Karur. But thank you again for joining us and helping us understand this case.
Thank you for having me on this. Thank you.
But staying with Tamil Nadu next, the supply and sale of chicken supply across the state as well as neighbouring Puducherry could face disruptions from the 31st of July. This after the Tamil Nadu Poultry Traders Federation announced an indefinite suspension of broiler sales. These traders claim that poultry producers are dispatching birds without stopping feed in advance, leading to hygiene concerns and inflated weights. The strike is expected to result in the shutdown of 60,000 to a lakh poultry retail stores, with restaurants and consumers also likely to bear the brunt. Meanwhile, the Tamil Nadu government has also constituted a high-level revenue augmentation committee headed by economist and former Planning Commission Deputy Chairman Montek Singh Ahluwalia. The committee will recommend measures to boost the state's tax and non-tax revenues. The 6-member panel has been given 3 months to suggest measures to plug revenue leakages, improve compliance, and strengthen Tamil Nadu's fiscal position following concerns over declining own tax revenue. Meanwhile, over 27 lakh voters could be left out of Telangana's draft electoral rolls as part of the state's Special Intensive Revision or SIR drive. According to the state's chief electoral officer, the names proposed for deletion include duplicate entries, shifted voters, and deceased electors identified during verification. Officials have clarified yet again that the draft rolls are not final and that anyone whose name is omitted will have an opportunity to file claims or submit what is known as Form 6 for inclusion before the final electoral rolls are published. Telangana, remember, will go to the polls in 2028 along with states like Karnataka, which is also seeing an SIR rollout of its own. In fact, that SIR rollout has birthed a whole new controversy in Telangana after the state government launched its electronic family register system. The BJP has taken exception to this proposal, accusing the Congress government of using the initiative to protect its apparent illegal vote bank ahead of SIR scrutiny. The Revanth Reddy government, however, has maintained the digital register is actually aimed at streamlining citizen services and providing an authenticated record of family details. Now here's one moment from Chennai that's got the internet talking. What was meant to be a grand celebration of HCL's 50th anniversary turned into an unexpected salary pitch. As CEO C. Vijay Kumar walked onto the stage, a section of employees began chanting, making demands for a salary hike. Well, the CEO, to his credit, handled that rather well, smiling and waving despite the loud chorus. Social media, of course, has had its field day, with many calling it the most direct appraisal request of the year. And with that, it's a wrap from all of us here on South Central. Thanks so much for watching. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, with more news and updates from South India. But for the moment, it's goodbye from us.